When you see a headline like US GDP reached $14 trillion, it sounds huge and impressive. But here's the real question. Does a bigger GDP number always mean the economy is truly producing a lot more stuff? In this video, we're going to gently unpack one of the core ideas in macroeconomics, the difference between nominal GDP and real GDP. We'll use a tiny, imaginary world where the economy produces only one thing: cars. By the end, you'll be able to look at any GDP number in the news and ask, okay, but is that nominal or real? Let's start with a real example. In 1960, US GDP was about $526 billion. In 2010, US GDP was about $14,660 billion. If we just divide those numbers, it looks like 14,660 divided by 526 equals 28. So it would be tempting to say, wow, the US economy became 28 times bigger between 1960 and 2010. But obviously, that's not true in terms of actual stuff produced. A big part of that 28-fold jump is simply that prices got higher over 50 years. So, to really understand how much more the country is producing, we need to separate the part of GDP that reflects more goods and services and the part that reflects higher prices. That's exactly where the idea of nominal GDP versus real GDP comes in. Let's start with nominal GDP. In economics, nominal doesn't mean small or not serious. It has a very specific meaning. Nominal GDP is the value of all final goods and services produced using the prices that are actually charged in that same year. In formula language, that's nominal GDP equals the quantity of each final good multiplied by its current price. Because it uses current prices, nominal GDP will go up over time for two reasons. One, we usually produce more goods and services. And two, the prices of most goods and services also rise over time. So nominal GDP mixes together genuine growth in production and inflation or price increases. That's why we need something better when we want to measure real production. To really see the difference, let's shrink the economy down to something super simple. Imagine a world where the economy produces only one final good, a particular car model. And to keep life easy for now, assume that it's the same car model every year. No quality changes, no extra features. That way, if GDP changes, we know it must be because of a change in the number of cars, a change in the price of cars, or both. This is our toy model to understand the real world. Here's our tiny data set for 3 years, 2004, 2005, and 2006. In 2004, the economy produces 10 cars, each priced at $20,000. In 2005, it produces 12 cars, each at $24,000. In 2006, it produces 13 cars, each at $26,000. From that, we can compute both nominal GDP and real GDP. Let's start with nominal. Remember, nominal GDP uses current prices. So how to calculate this? It's number of cars produced multiplied by quantity of cars produced. So in 2004, it's 10 cars times 20,000, which is $200,000. In 2005, it's 12 cars times 24,000, which is $288,000. In 2006, it's 13 cars times 26,000, which is $338,000. Now, look at how fast nominal GDP is growing. From 2004 to 2005, it goes from 200,000 to 288,000. That's a 44% increase. How did you get this number? By simply calculating the percentage change. That is 288,000 minus 200,000 divided by 200,000 equals 44%. From 2005 to 2006, it goes from 288,000 to 338,000. About a 16% increase. Those growth rates look pretty dramatic. But remember, both quantities and prices are rising here. So part of that growth is just inflation or price increases. So here's the core problem with nominal GDP. It increases because we produce more cars, and the price of each car also goes up. If our goal is to measure how much more output the economy is producing, we don't want higher prices to fool us into thinking we're producing a lot more stuff. We need a way to remove the effect of price increases. That's exactly why economists construct real GDP. Real GDP is designed to answer this question. How much would the value of output be if prices did not change? Formally, we say that real GDP is the sum of quantities of final goods multiplied by constant prices from a chosen base year. Let's debunk this one by one. Constant prices means we freeze prices at the level of some particular year, and then use those frozen prices to value output in every year. This lets us see what's changing because of quantities, not because of prices. To calculate real GDP, we must choose a base year, a year whose prices we will use as our constant yardstick. In this example, we will choose 2005 as the base year. That means we take the 2005 car price of $24,000 and pretend that every year's cars are priced at $24,000. We're not saying that this was the actual price in 2004 or 2006. We're just using it as a common measuring stick. The result we get is called real GDP in 2005 dollars. Now, let's compute real GDP using the 2005 price of $24,000. So real GDP in 2004, by keeping 2005 as the base year, is 24 cars multiplied by 20,000, which is $240,000. Real GDP in 2005 is 12 cars times 24,000, which is $288,000. Here, real GDP and nominal GDP are the same because 2005 is the base year. Real GDP of 2006 in 2005 dollars is 13 cars times 24,000, which is $312,000. Now let's check the growth rates. From 2004 to 2005, real GDP goes from 240,000 to 288,000. That's a 20% increase. From 2005 to 2006, it goes from 288,000 to 312,000. About an 8% increase. Compare that to nominal GDP's 44% and 16%. Real GDP gives a much calmer, more realistic picture of how production is changing. You might wonder, what if we had used 2006 as the base year instead of 2005? In that case, we would multiply quantities in all years by the 2006 price of $26,000. What would happen? The levels of real GDP in each year would be different because now we're using a different price, but, and this is the key point, the percentage changes from year to year would be exactly the same as before. That means the growth rates will be similar. And for economic analysis, we care mainly about those growth rates, not the exact dollar figure. If you look at the official data for the US and plot both nominal GDP and real GDP from 1960 to 2010, you'll see something striking. Nominal GDP rises about 28 times. Real GDP rises only about 4.7 times. That's still a big increase in real production. The US is much richer in 2010 than in 1960. But it's nowhere near a 28-fold increase. The huge gap between those two numbers comes from inflation, the rise in prices over time.
Before we wrap up, here are some names you might see in textbooks or articles. Nominal GDP is also called dollar GDP, or GDP in current dollars, or GDP at current prices. Real GDP can also be called GDP in terms of goods, GDP in constant dollars, GDP adjusted for inflation, or GDP in chained $2005, or whatever the reference year is. Different phrases, same core idea. Nominal uses current prices, real uses constant prices. And just to connect this back to our earlier discussion of GDP from the first video, GDP is the standard measure of aggregate output in an economy. We can look at it from the production side or from the income side. And those two always match. Total production equals total income. What we did today was refine this idea by asking, do we measure that output at current prices or at constant prices? That's the heart of nominal versus real GDP. So, to put everything in one place, nominal GDP values output using the prices of each year. It goes up when we produce more and when prices rise. Real GDP values output using constant prices from a base year. It isolates real changes in production. When you hear big GDP numbers on the news, always ask, is that nominal or real? Because only real GDP tells you how much more stuff the economy is actually producing. Thanks for hanging out and learning this with me. If this made GDP feel a little less scary, let me know in the comments, and we'll keep building up your macroeconomics toolkit step by step.